is.
Now it is going, yes. Okay, so my idea for this, so this is like our first episode ever, right? Lessons on the Fence is the name. And I think we should just discuss a little bit of what we both envision that to be.
Okay.
Like why the name Lessons on the Fence and what we envision this will be eventually, hopefully.
Eventually, hopefully. Okay. So, when would you say you came up with the concept of this podcast?
Okay. So actually, originally, originally my idea was for a podcast that I was just going to do by myself. And my thought was like, well, really, I was like looking at domains on Google, like for websites, and like for some reason I thought of like the importance of being on the fence about things, you know, like
Metaphorically.
on the fence, yeah. Like on different like there's a lot of issues, and I feel like I've heard that people often, I mean, people are obviously very opinionated sometimes. I mean, I know I'm very opinionated sometimes, as much as I try not to be. But the idea is when you already have an opinion about something, it's really hard to learn new things about it.
Yeah.
Like when you hear things, whether they're for or against the opinion you already have, either way, you tend to enforce the idea you already have. So even if there's a really strong argument from the other side of an argument that you have an opinion on, like that will still tend to strengthen your argument on your side.
Yeah. I think I heard about this in something I was listening to earlier. I think it's called conservation bias, where like you have already formed an opinion about something, so that leads you to read things, or when you read things, you already are reading that from that perspective, having that opinion. So you basically read things into confirming your opinion, your predisposed opinion. Maybe it's either conservation or confirmation.
Maybe
I feel like
confirmation bias. Confirmation bias sounds
Yeah.
right.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and it goes along with like doing Google searches to like look up things, and it's like how if you search things the way that you already have an opinion, you're more likely to find information that just confirms your opinion, right?
Right.
Like, for example, if you want to know like one very sensitive issue, right, with people with strong opinions on both sides is abortion, right? So say you want to look up things about abortion, well, you could look up is abortion right or wrong or something like that, right? And that's more or less unbiased. But if you look up like why is abortion wrong, then it's like you already are kind of inserting an opinion into it,
That's
right?
true.
You're already saying it's wrong and asking why. So it's like you're going to get answers that are more likely to reflect that opinion. Or like, why is abortion necessary? I mean, I guess that could be either one. But the point is, if you look into things based on your view, like already holding an opinion, then you might not gain anything out of it. And so, yeah, that's the original idea, is my thought, just how we can learn things by trying not to jump to a conclusion, like trying to look into something open-minded. And so that's being on the fence. So the idea, and the original idea, I was thinking like maybe in my life I've been forced to be on the fence in several issues, just having opposing views on both sides of me. And I was thinking maybe this would be something where I just talk about some of those. But that's kind of changed. And now this is going to be something that we'd like to do together. So it
Yes.
transitioned from my idea of a personal podcast/blog. In fact, yeah, I think it was going to be a blog at first.
Right.
Like I was just going to write stuff, but now it's going to be a podcast, and instead of just me, it's going to be both of us.
Yes. And speaking of you, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, yeah. Obviously you know me, but if anyone's listening, or anyone will listen, they will not. So my name is Seth Conklin. Let's see, how much information should I give away?
I don't know. Enough for people to know what you do. And I mean, really, that's all people care about. What's your job? What's your title? What do you do?
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. I currently work as a software engineer. I've been working as a software engineer for, I guess, 18 months-ish. Like a year and 9 months. So going on 2 years. So I graduated from college the end of 2019 with a bachelor's degree in computer science. And yeah, that's me. How about you?
Yeah. I'm Anthony. I'm Seth's wife.
Yeah, we've been married now for
Oh, I had a countdown. I think it's like
a couple
70,
months, right?
It's like 70 something days. 71 days now? I don't know.
So a little over 2 months.
Yeah.
And before that, we dated for a year and a half or so.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and I am a first year teacher right now. I teach orchestra. I went to school for music education and graduated in May. And now I'm in my first year teaching for reals. And it's very challenging, but it's very fulfilling. And it's my dream. So, yeah.
Yeah. Did we say your last name yet? Should we say your last name so if any students are listening?
If any students are listening, maybe you shouldn't be, but yes, this is Mrs. Marie T.
We don't need to say the school though, right?
Oh, no.
But I guess it wouldn't be hard to figure out.
I
if we give
know.
up too
See,
much
that's the
information.
thing. People can find me pretty easily. I think there's only one other person. Well, there's probably more. But I've seen one other person with my same last name. And I think she works at a university. I feel like it's Ohio State or something. Her name is Maria Mariti, I think. Looked that up a long time ago. So if that's right, this is a shout out to Maria Mariti. Last name twin.
Yeah.
Who's not in my family, my immediate family.
So there's probably only one Intignari Mariti teaching orchestra in the world, huh?
Oh my god, yeah.
And that's you.
Yes. Just waiting for someone to track me down now. But I'm only a teacher. There's no reason to try to find me. There's nothing you can get from me.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves, right? I mean, if anyone even ever listens to this, who knows?
Yeah.
And if they did, like,
if you are listening, please
don't track us down.
Please don't track us down. And thanks. Like,
unless you have friendly intentions.
Right. Or consider yourselves the original, the OG listeners and hopefully fans of this podcast. So when it blows up, you can know that you were the first.
Yeah. Especially if you're listening to this episode, like, on YouTube, which is where we're planning to initially put it.
Yes.
And you see there are very few views, then you know. But of course, at that point, who knows if this will be anything.
Right.
Right now, it's just an idea. So let's get a little bit more into
the process.
What we want it to be.
Yes.
So we've talked about kind of like my initial idea and how now we're going to do it together. But let's talk about how we've discussed what we're going to do to prepare for future episodes and what we're going to talk about.
Right. So we've kind of, what's the word? Just accumulated, combined, acquired. I don't know. We've made a list of various topics that we are interested in, that we hear people talking about pretty commonly, pretty oftenly.
Frequently.
Frequently,
Maybe, yeah.
thank you. We've made this list of things that, people feel very strongly, things that people feel very strongly one way or another about. We plan on picking a topic each week to research independently, and then we come together and discuss what we found, and then our reactions, thoughts, opinions on the results of what we found, or like the things that we've read. I mean, those could be opinions from other people on that topic, and then we just bring it up and say, I don't know about that, or I agree, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the hope is that each of us, we're going to look into it on our own for the week.
Exactly.
And at the end of the week, when we record, we'll both have our own separate ideas where we can discuss what we found.
Right.
Right?
So this is basically like a simulation of the ideal democratic society, where people actually read things and discuss it civilly.
Which of course means we need to look at all views.
That too, yeah.
And even though we may have biased opinions towards one direction, like not the band, but
Yeah.
one side of the issue, we should still try to approach each side of the issue with an open mind and discuss the pros and cons of the different sides and whatnot.
Right.
And we've discussed several things so far. I guess it remains to be determined what we'll talk about next week.
Yes. So you gotta stay tuned to see. We have topics the topics that we've brainstormed fall in all kinds of categories. So we have like everything from pop culture to technology and AI to science to religion. Like, we kind of have a smattering of things that we will dive into. What besides pop culture? Something else along that line. Oh, we also have like health and wellness.
Health and wellness.
Topics.
Did you say religion yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to look at different issues. I don't know if abortion's on the list, but that's
That would
something
be.
controversial people talk about. Or at least where there's heated debates.
Oh yeah.
Probably not debates. I feel like it's just like opinions. I don't know.
No, I mean it's not just that. It's just legislature and a policy that's like. It's not just now at this point. It's beyond the debates. It's at the point where it's affecting the whole nation. How?
Yeah. And there's strong opinions on both sides.
Yeah. But with what's happening now, it's way more than just is abortion okay or not. Now it's like, is it okay to track people down who may have had an abortion at this time? Like, is it okay to police it as a everyday person? This is kind of crazy.
Yeah. It is interesting. And maybe we'll talk more about it at some point.
Maybe.
We'll investigate it further.
Likely.
And several other issues.
Yes, because there's so many issues.
That's the thing. And the hope is like maybe more things will come up as we go.
Okay.
Right? Which
you
they
hope
will.
for more issues.
Well, not more issues, but we'll just try to stay current is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
we'll try to follow things that people are talking about at the time.
For sure.
Like obviously we would hope that some things might become resolved to a point, right?
Yeah,
But maybe as those things become resolved, it brings up other things.
for sure. Yeah. I
Of
mean, the
course.
fallout of something
Yeah.
being resolved for one group is like the end of the world for another because of all the polarization.
Yeah. Like an analogy I think of is like as a software engineer, sometimes you come across bugs that you need to fix. But there are often times where those bugs might have other code that was written to work around the bug. Or I mean in any case, like there might be other code that's used to the bug, so it behaves based on it, right? So you always have to worry, like, if you fix that bug, like, even though you fixed it, it might cause issues in other parts of the code.
Yeah.
So maybe something like that. Maybe, like, as some issues are resolved, they can create other issues, but still going towards progress overall.
Yeah. Right.
But I guess in the idea of code, I mean, I think in software that a lot of times they say, or, like, you might not want to deal with the bug because of worrying about that, but yeah, hopefully society will progress.
Yeah.
Hopefully issues will become resolved.
Well, it's conversations like these that if there were more of them. Well, not maybe this episode, but the future ones.
Yeah, you would hope. But I mean the thing is, I feel like we might agree on a lot politically, right? We might have similar opinions.
But we're challenging ourselves to look at others. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say challenging, but some people can't read media from a certain source without getting angry. Like they can't go somewhere else for their news because they disagree with it so much that it causes them to rage. So like us being more informed about what's out there on all sides, I feel like again is a step towards progress because some people won't even look the other direction or at the other side without
some people
dismissing it.
Gotta worry about those people. Now those people never want to listen to our podcast because we're talking about that. We're otherizing them.
Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Shouldn't have said that. Take it back. But I'm not upset at you. I mean, like, I feel like I know plenty of people in that boat. And maybe, me at some point, too, when I would read the news.
Yeah, it's easy to be in that boat with one thing or another, right? It's easy to have an opinion on one. I think at some point we're all like that, right? We all have an opinion on something, and when we read something that might oppose that, it can be offensive. And that's I think the important thing with it. Like, we need to do our best to not
take it personally when someone else thinks differently than you.
Yeah,
or like,
definitely.
Yeah. It's like the problem is people identify with whatever their truth is. So if someone goes against that, what they believe to be true, then it's like that person going against it is against you.
Yeah.
That's how people take it.
Yeah, and that's interesting. That's always something I've struggled with. So like I grew up Mormon, right? I mean, you know that. I guess our listeners don't, if anyone is listening ever. I mean, obviously they're not now as we're recording since this is not live, but one thing that always bothered about me in church is when people would say that they know, right? Like, so in Mormon church, once a month, the members are able to go up, and like anyone in the congregation can go and share their testimony, which basically means they just go up and say all the things they know about the church. Like, they know that the church is true. They know, I mean, which is interesting because, like, you say that kind of thing to a non-member and they're like, "Do you mean true?" But like to a member, there's like, well, like that it's the only religion, like that God appeared to one of the prophets, like one of the speakers of God. So it's interesting. Like they would say that, and I always felt like, I believe it, or like I did at times, right? But I don't know it, and so it always bothered me that they would say that they knew.
Makes sense.
And I feel like that's something that a lot of times people do in a lot of things. Like they claim knowledge of something, or they feel like they know something, and I think that could be part of this issue. People feeling like they know something, and when you feel like you know something, like you have an opinion so strong it feels like knowledge, that's when like everything will just reinforce it.
Yeah. And you have just this wall up, this wall blocking anything that may cause you to question.
Yeah, so I think it's something that sometimes we might need to be more careful with when we use the word know. When we say we know something, like be more careful of what we understand to be knowledge. I mean, just thinking about like the Trump administration, or like I think it was Kellyanne Conway who talked about alternative facts. It was like that term shouldn't make any sense. Like you can't have facts and then alternative. Like there's only one set of facts for any given thing. And if you have alternative ones, then those have to be opinions, right? At least that's my thought on that. But maybe I'm showing my bias. I don't know. Need to be careful. Careful to not show it.
Do you think before Trump, like, people found this process of us, like, picking apart arguments and thinking about it, like, before Trump, was that a priority of people? I mean, what we're doing is in reaction to the fact that a lot of people are closed off to other opinions. But were people always that way before Trump? Or, like, if we were to look at a graph, or like a line graph of like polarization and views of the media, where would the baseline be for one, and then did it spike with Trump, or has it been on a steady incline?
Has it? Are you asking if it started with Trump?
That's what I'm saying. Like this kind of picking apart ideas and people feeling that's an important thing to do, and recognizing that people are closed off to other thoughts. Like, is this a reaction to that administration's doing?
I think this is an interesting question. And it's hard to like dive deep into these things without doing research ahead of time. But my view on this, as like how I understand things right now, is that the reason Trump was able to succeed, I feel like, is in part because the way the feedback loops work, like the way social media pushes the extreme ideas, and Trump often is very extreme. I mean, I don't feel like Trump was necessarily the start of a problem. I feel like Trump was somehow able to take advantage of issues in different things.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know what all those issues are. I mean, part of it might be social media. Part of it could be other things. I had a thought, but it's gone.
Yeah, I think people just treat him as like the impetus for all issues, but I can't help but wonder if all those issues are kind of just under the surface, you know?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
then,
another thing I thought of, I remember something Andrew Yang said. He was one of my favorite candidates for president this last election. Well, I should say he was my favorite, not one of my favorites. Um, and what he said about Trump was like that Trump was not the problem. He was or like a symptom or something like that.
mm, yeah, I guess
Or
that's what my
like
question was.
he was a result of the problem.
Right.
And part of the problem that Andrew Yang mentioned was a lot of jobs in specific swing states, like specific states that unexpectedly went to Trump, where a lot of people had lost their jobs due to automation.
Mm,
And so that makes it seem like Trump was able to win because people were upset, and
mhm,
Trump, in a way, like voiced their upsetness. You know,
mhm,
it's like people are upset because things aren't going their way, and so in response, they might gravitate towards the candidate who seems upset.
mhm.
Which, I mean, seems fair with Trump. He did often seem to be kind of ranting. Um, yeah, and so that idea is that it's not stuff that Trump did, but Trump was able to take advantage of it, take advantage of a situation, and when really it was caused by something else. And the issue in this case might be that the other party was not addressing that anything was wrong, right? Like with Hillary Clinton saying things like, well, like Donald Trump, I think he said, "Make America Great Again," right? And then I think Hillary Clinton might have said something like that America is great, or like
Yeah.
it already is the best it has been. I'm not sure. I'm like, those quotes could be completely out of place. But the point is, she wasn't acknowledging that there were issues when there were probably voters that were struggling with their issues being unaddressed. And Trump seemed like the better choice because he did seem like he was going to do things.
He did things all right.
Yeah. And now I'm not exactly a Trump supporter, but
Not
I think there are
exactly.
things he did. No,
Say not exactly, like.
not at all, I guess. Not at all. But I think there were things he wanted to do that were good.
Or like, yeah, I guess could have been good for certain groups of people had it been pulled off in the right
Well,
way.
I'm sure he accomplished some things. I haven't followed enough of it to really know. I just know he was very polarizing. And and a lot of issue I feel like comes with that, right? Where you might have people who support Trump, and it's kind of a problem if the people on the other side automatically just assume you're an idiot, right? If you support a given candidate. And so obviously that could be a problem on both sides, right? Because obviously Trump had a lot of supporters. I mean, he lost the election to Joe Biden. I mean, some might argue that it was not like it was rigged, I guess. But either way, Trump still got a lot of votes.
Yeah.
And if it was rigged for Joe Biden, there's no reason why Trump's votes would have been fake, right? So we have to acknowledge that Trump definitely did get a lot of votes. And so there's a lot of people who wanted him to win. And if we just otherize that group of people,
Otherwise.
yeah. Have you not heard that much? I don't know, it seems like a
I
good
haven't
word.
heard that word, but it sounded cool.
Okay.
I didn't know that was a word, but it can be now.
I feel like I've heard it before, but if not, then
Otherwise.
Maybe we can popularize it. That'd be cool. I think it's already a thing. But anyway, yeah, that's just where we need to be careful, right? Because I mean, the problem can be on both ends. Like on the one side, maybe you think, like, Trump seems kind of crazy, right? You might think that. I'm not saying one way or the other, but someone might think that.
Mhm.
He definitely says a lot of polarizing things. And on the other side, if people automatically assume if anyone supports that they're crazy, then there's not going to be dialogue, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So what we need to do, I guess, is just try to avoid either side of that, right?
Well, yeah, and that's part of the problem too, though, is saying that there's a binary, like you're either on this side or you're on this other side. That's a big part of the problem too.
Yeah, I mean, those aren't the only possibilities, right?
Right.
And that is also something that is difficult to get past. This, I guess, black and white thinking, right?
Yes.
Where either it's one or the other. But the reality is there are a lot of different views in everything, and it's not always just one thing or another.
For sure. And we will be exploring all those things or another on this podcast for select topics.
I was just thinking maybe that would be a good name for a podcast.
What?
Black and white thinking.
Yes.
Double meaning. But maybe not.
Well, maybe it could be Black and White Thinking Productions. That's
Oh.
our studio name. I don't know.
Lessons on the Fence, a black and white thinking production.
Exactly.
That might be already taken. I don't know. We have to look into it.
I don't know. Yeah.
Don't know how that works. But yeah, did we mention that? Should we mention that? No? Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't. Does it matter? I was about to say, doesn't really matter, but does it? It's one of those things. The color blindness issue. Yes or no?
See, my
Color
opinion...
blindness.
Yeah, my opinion is it shouldn't. Right? Like, I don't think it should matter.
As a non-person of color, you don't think it should? No.
That's a valid point. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know. I think that, I mean, my parents say I'm very fortunate to have experienced a life where I haven't felt hindered by my race. So, like, I mean, I remember someone asking me, a white person asking me, it was Cheryl, by the way, when I was like little-ish, because I was like middle school age or high school age. I said it didn't really matter. Like, I didn't say the words "I don't see color," but we were having some conversation about how I was the only black kid in a lot of my classes, and Cheryl had asked me if that had bothered me, and I said no, like it didn't make a difference to me. And she was like, okay, so you don't see color? And I never heard that phrase before. I mean, this is like, I don't know, 2013, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I guess not, no, I don't. And all of the awareness around like what it means to be a person of color, that kind of movement didn't really happen until kind of recently for my generation. So before, just a few years ago, I would say, yeah, I think we should go for a colorblindless society. But at this point now, I don't think that's possible. I'm not sure whether I feel like it'd be a positive or negative way to exist. But I overall, I just don't think it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I've definitely thought about it. And I feel like, I mean, obviously for us, like dating, getting married, it had nothing to do with, I mean, that had nothing to do with it. But it definitely has been something where we've had some interesting conversations.
Encounters.
Yeah,
Yes,
where
conversation.
interesting conversations where maybe I've said something that upset you, not knowing or something like that.
Well,
Just
in some of those situations early on, it was because there were issues happening in the world and you would play devil's advocate.
yeah, which is
Like
something I tend to do in
that,
general.
yeah, and I didn't know that early on. And now there's that term like gaslighting, I guess, where someone dismisses your feelings on an issue because they're acting out of either playfulness or they don't think you should be upset. And like that was one of those situations. I just remember talking about one George Floyd, and then another time the Central Park thing where the woman called the police on that black guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you just play the devil's advocate, and like in two of those situations, I just felt like it was totally awful.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that that's something you do on like every issue, and I feel like that's another reason for this podcast. It's like it gives you a safe space to like look at the opinions that people don't
I know that is
that people are
something.
against.
Yeah. I mean, that is something I feel like I have a tendency to do maybe more than most people. Um is I always feel like I'm playing the devil's advocate. Like whenever there's like someone who has done something wrong, like in some context or like some debate against something, like I often think like, well, maybe there's a reason. Like,
Yeah, and I
well,
think it is important to do that, like to think, like when a tragedy happens and someone, you know, commits a very violent act that harms a lot of people. Like nowadays, especially with the shootings that have happened, like I definitely think, like, what was going on in that person's mind? Like, how has that person been hurt to the point where they need to hurt people or other people at that extreme? But like when you're talking to someone else about it and you don't know that they may be a victim, not that I've been a victim of any of those things that we were discussing where you would play the devil's advocate, but like talking to someone who comes from a different lived experience to you in a way that makes their feeling about that issue, although it might be closer to them than it is to you, makes their feeling seem like you're invalidating it. That's when it can be like kind of frustrating.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like, I mean, at that time you didn't know that like, my dad's been stopped by the police a whole bunch, or like people yelled the N-word at me, my neighborhood, like saying I didn't belong there. Like, so those issues on race and like white people using their privilege to make what they're doing okay, even if it's not against people that are not white. Arguing in favor of those people or like considering their side in our conversation about it
yeah,
doesn't feel so great from the point of view of a person who identifies more with the victim in that situation.
yeah. That makes sense.
And it's just for you how you talk sometimes it's like unclear how you truly feel about, or at least in the beginning. It's true or unclear about how you really felt about something.
Yeah, And that's an interesting thing, 'cause I mean that's definitely something um, where even though like you've talked about how you feel like you've had a fairly privileged childhood, I mean you've still come across things like that. You've still come across racism.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, right, growing up, um, so my race has never been an issue, right? And so you're right, it's something I didn't recognize. And so it's not exactly something I could identify with, right? Um, but you're right. I mean, and there's definitely times for both of those. There's times for advocating, right? I mean, I feel like playing devil's advocate is important a lot of times, because a lot of times it's possible to jump to conclusions about people before giving them a fair chance. But at the same time, it is important to recognize people's feelings, and when they say things to you, if you automatically talk about the other side of the issue, then I could definitely see how that can, I guess, feel like you're not understanding them, or not not recognizing their point.
Right. Yeah.
And that makes sense. So yeah, hopefully this will be a safe space.
Yeah.
To do the
For
devil's
sure.
advocate, to look at different issues and try to recognize both sides, but hopefully without hurting too many people's feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, you just can never know, like, what a person has gone through. And that's what contributes to every choice, every thought that they have. So sometimes going against that, what they do or what they say, is like a violation, or they feel like is a violation of who and what they are.
Yeah.
But that's how we're going to try to find out about who and what people are through what they think and say. And then, in turn, who we are and what we think.
Yeah.
And this has just been a little sampler of a lot of different things. I didn't know we were going to go into all that. It's been good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess as we go, what we talk about might be a little more focused.
Yeah.
Hopefully our different backgrounds will help us both to kind of see things from different perspectives, and then we'll also both try to explore the different perspectives in our research in advance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, is there anything else you have to say, or anything else that we should say?
Okay, yeah, I'm black.
If we have to spell it out for you. Well, I mean, we're going to put this on YouTube and have that.
Yes. You can see the cover.
Yeah, you'll see the
You've
cover,
seen the
which
cover
indicates.
the whole time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Drawn by Seth. I did not know he was such a talented artist.
Oh, they were traced. I just had the real photo and traced around it.
Well, still.
Simple,
Gotta give you
but-
some credit.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
And we give our listeners credit too. Thank you for
Yes.
listening to this episode.
Thank you if anyone is listening. I hope so, but
And we hope to
never know.
catch you in the next episode
Yeah, next time,
on
lessons on the fence. That might improve as we go, right?
maybe, or we just not have that. Okay.
Yeah. We'll see. Okay. Goodbye.